1970, I got my private. I grew up on an airport initially that was closed down. Got closed down in 1955. And we moved into the terminal building, which is a little dinky shack building with a windsock tower sitting on top of it. About 2 months after it closed. But the airport was still actually being used by people who didn't know it was closed. So airplanes were landing on it, like for the next 7 years, until the gravel company dug it up to the point where nobody could land on it. And I was the only one in the family who didn't get a ride. Everybody else in the family got a ride. In all those 7 years, I never got a ride in an airplane, which kind of ticked me off. And it sort of, caused me to think, you know what, screw it. I'll go and get my own pilot's license so I can go up anytime I want to. So that was my very childish first motivation. And as it turned out, when I got out of the service in 1970, I moved to Milwaukee to work for a year in the state of Wisconsin so I could become a resident, so I could pay in-state tuition at the University of Wisconsin. And that was the year that I got my private pilot's license. Now, I had really no intention of being a professional pilot or doing it for a living. That happened when I went to college to be a pharmacist, and I decided I didn't like that. So I went back to school, became a high school science teacher, and was hired. But the summer before I was to get started as a high school science teacher, a crop duster flew over my house. And it was like, and I looked at that, and I looked at this, and I looked at that, and I looked at that, and I said, well, to hell with that, I'm going to go do this. And that's really how I started flying for money. Ended up being an egg pilot instead of. The reason why I went into that is because when I was at the University of Wisconsin-Sheboygan, in between majors, because I didn't immediately decide to be a high school science teacher after dumping out of pharmacy. I had done something on my own by accident, which was a lecture pit would open up. And I noticed that between the hours of 2:30 and 3:30, the lecture pit was empty. And I thought, maybe I could do a mini lecture during that time on one particular subject. And so I put up posters, and I'd study up on a particular subject. After about 6 months of doing this, like once or twice a week, the lecture pit was full. And I was having a ball, because it's like the way I do ground school. It's a dog and pony show, with knowledge, up in front of a bunch of people. So the teachers that I was close to at the University of Wisconsin, Sheboygan, I said, well, what should I major on now? I said, well, you might want to try teaching. I said, what do I know about teaching? And they look at me kind of funny like, and they go, well, what do you think you've been doing with these little mini lectures? Oh, yeah. I guess, So that's the reason why I went into teaching. Yeah. Do I like teaching? Absolutely. And as a flight instructor, it's the world's best teaching job, by far, because you get to teach a variety of different disciplines instead of being locked into just one or two. So, yeah, it's an awesome job. There's nothing I'd rather do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Now, again, if you're an air freight guy, the boxes don't talk back.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're overweight, you can kick a box out. Passengers get pretty upset when you kick them out because you're a little overweight, like in the air.
Yeah.
They get downright frantic, in fact, especially when you don't give them parachutes. They usually scream all the way to the ground. So you don't have to have much of a personality to fly air freight.
Yeah.
You don't have to have any personality to fly the airlines either. You know, except you have to have some kind of the silky John Wayne voice if you're going to talk to the, "Hello, this is your captain speaking. You know, we're now flying over Niagara Falls," or something like this, you know, or "We're going to be a little late because of headwinds," and things like that. Other than that, they don't have to be personable at all, and a lot of them aren't. Corporate, different story. You have to be silky smooth because you're interacting with the higher end. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Jimmy D. Stutzman was a guy who worked for at Farmers Flying Service as an ag pilot. Without him, I'd be dead. If I hadn't had spent my early career as an aviator without him, I'd have been out of control. Because I did incredibly stupid things with the airplane. And he would notice this, obviously, and he would ground me. I mean, like every 2 weeks. You know, I get grounded. I wasn't doing anything that he wasn't doing. I mean, if he was out buzzing people, I'd go out and buzz people too. And then I'd come back, proud as could be, the buttons bursting on my chest because I was so proud of the way I flew the airplane. And he'd look at me and he'd go, "You know, Byron, you're a hell of a pilot. You're one of the best I've ever seen. But your judgment ain't worth a damn, so you're grounded." I could thunk the tire off the top of his pickup truck one time because he did that to me. And I thought, wow, there ain't too many people that can do that. You could thunk a tire, an airplane tire, right off the top of a pickup truck. Are you kidding? You know, but, man, I had to be one of a million. Byron, he caught me because he was in the truck. And it wasn't completely without damage. I mean, I did take out a running light off the top of the truck. It's his best truck, too. Really wasn't good. So he'd look at me and he said, "Byron, you keep forgetting who owns this stuff." You're grounded. So yeah, he was a huge inspiration. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I absolutely remember that. The very, very first time, my very first lesson, very early in 1970. It happened at the Hales Corners Airport, which has since been closed, in southern Wisconsin. It was pretty close when I first moved there. And I'd been 4 years in the Air Force to be around airplanes, but I did not operate any of those airplanes as a pilot, because I wasn't a pilot. I was a ground guy in aviation, got to ride with these airplanes. And my instructor was standing next to a 150. And I'll never forget this. I had an MGB, you know, 1966 MGB, and I pull it up, and there's the instructor standing next to the Cessna 150. And I walk up, and I'd never seen a Cessna 150 in my life. And I walk up to this thing, you know, and I kind of go, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I says, "We're going to fly in this? That's a small airplane. I mean, it's a tiny little airplane, 2 seats, that's it." I said, "This is a piece of junk. You kidding me? We're not going to fly in this." He says, "Oh yeah, this is the #1 trainer in the world and all that thing." So he hops in there, and I swear to God, to this day, he might have had me confused with another student because he plants in there, and I was sitting over on the left side. He says, "Okay, fire it up." I'd never fired up an airplane in my life, but I had read Kirshner's student flight manual like 14 times. So I thought, well, I think it starts like a car, you know. So I put the key in, vroom, vroom, you know, I got it going. He says, "All right, let's taxi to the end of the runway." And I had never taxied an airplane. You use your feet.
Yeah.
And because you know, it's just the opposite than if you were sitting on a flexible flyer sled. You know, if you sit on a flexible flyer sled, and if you want to go that way, you push this foot because you got a bar there.
Right.
But in an airplane, if you want to go that way, you push the left pedal, and if you want to go that way, you push the right pedal. And they tilt for brakes. I didn't know that. The throttle, you know, goes faster when you push it in, just the opposite of a lot of equipment. When you pull you got to pull the throttle to make it increase the horsepower. So it was quite an adventure getting to the end of the runway. He didn't say a word. We did the run up and all that, and he had not instructed me at all in any of it. Okay, time to take off. So I took off. I shoved it forward and I horseback on the yoke, and it was pretty eventful, right? By the time I got that thing 200 or 300 feet in the air, I was done with flying. That was it. If I was going to live through getting this thing back on the ground, I was never going to go back to the airport again. You know, I mean, it just absolutely scared the living daylights out of me. I mean, I remember hanging off the fence at the airport, thinking everybody who flew were gods. Just remember that. I remember my first takeoff. Remember my first solo. You know, manipulating the controls.
Yeah.
Manipulating the controls. The actual ability to fly the machine is the easiest part of flying. It's the most fun part. I am very amazed that I am still as much in love with it as I was when I first started. I'm just absolutely fascinated about every time I go up.